Have you ever walked away from a social gathering feeling emptier than when you arrived? Not tired, not bored, but mentally drained? Like your battery didn't just drop, it collapsed? And the strangest part, everyone else seemed energized, while you felt like disappearing. What if that feeling isn't a flaw, but proof that your brain works differently? Stay with me, because psychology reveals something most people never realize. And once you hear it, you may never see yourself the same way again. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one talks about. Society worships social energy, loud rooms, endless conversations, constant connection. So if you don't thrive there, the label comes fast. Antisocial, awkward, closed off. But psychology facts tell a completely different story. Some brains aren't designed to blend in. They're designed to filter. And if you've ever felt disconnected from most people not because you hate them, but because something feels off, this might explain everything. Let's start with the first psychological marker. You don't tolerate fake energy, not even a little. Your brain scans for authenticity like a radar. Tone shifts. Forced laughter, performative kindness. You notice it instantly, and once you sense it, your nervous system quietly pulls the emergency brake. This isn't arrogance, it's awareness. Research in psychology shows that as self-awareness increases, tolerance for inauthentic behavior drops sharply. Your brain isn't judging others, it's protecting itself. So when conversations feel rehearsed, when people speak but don't mean, when connection feels like performance, your mind checks out. Not because you're cold, but because pretending costs you too much. And here's where tension begins to rise. Most social spaces are built on surface-level exchange, pleasantries, small talk, safe opinions. But your brain doesn't operate there. It goes deeper, faster. Which leads to the second psychological truth most people misunderstand. You crave depth, not distance. You're not avoiding relationships. You're avoiding empty ones. Psychology calls this a preference for cognitive depth common in people with complex internal worlds. You don't want 10 friends you barely know. You want one conversation that actually means something. How's the weather? You answer politely, but your mind drifts. Your nervous system knows this conversation has no substance, no exchange of ideas, no emotional resonance, so you disengage. Not because you can't connect, but because you won't fake it. And that choice comes with a cost. Because when you refuse shallow connection, loneliness often follows. But here's the twist. Psychology facts show that people who prefer depth often experience situational loneliness, not chronic loneliness. You don't feel lonely all the time. You feel lonely around the wrong people, and that realization quietly changes everything. Now let's talk about the part no one warns you about. Your brain doesn't just process social interaction emotionally. It processes it neurologically. Some people have what psychologists call high social sensitivity. It means your nervous system reacts more intensely to stimulation, especially human interaction, facial expressions, voice tone, energy shifts, unspoken tension. Your brain is absorbing all of it. So when you socialize, you're not just talking, you're processing dozens of invisible signals at once, which explains the exhaustion. After social interaction, your brain needs recovery time, not minutes, sometimes hours, sometimes days. This doesn't mean you dislike people. It means your mind works overtime when you're around them. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think you're distant. But in reality, you're overloaded. You don't need isolation because you hate connection. You need it because your brain needs silence to recalibrate. But what happens when you ignore this need? When you force yourself to socialize anyway? Psychology shows that chronic overstimulation in high-sensitivity brains leads to burnout, irritability, and emotional shutdown, which might explain something uncomfortable you've felt before. That moment when even people you care about start to feel draining. That urge to pull away without knowing why. And here's the cliffhanger. What if this rare brain type isn't meant to socialize the way everyone else does? What if the real problem isn't your energy, but the environments you've been trying to survive in? Because up next, we're going to uncover the final psychological trait, the one that explains why your brain feels powerful in solitude, why you think differently, and why, once you understand this, you'll stop blaming yourself forever. What if the very thing that makes social life exhausting for you is the same thing that makes your mind unusually powerful when you're alone? Because this is where everything clicks. Psychology doesn't call it weakness, it calls it a rare cognitive wiring, and once you see it, you'll realize you were never meant to operate like everyone else. There's a final psychological trait that ties everything together, and it's the one most people never discover about themselves. Your brain is optimized for internal processing, not constant external stimulation. In simple terms, your mind does its best work inward, while others gain energy from external input noise. People, movement, your brain generates energy through reflection, pattern recognition, and deep thought. Psychology facts show that individuals with this wiring experience heightened activity in the default mode network. That's the part of the brain responsible for insight, self-awareness, imagination, and meaning-making. This is why silence doesn't scare you, it fuels you. And it's why solitude feels expansive instead of empty. But here's where the conflict begins. The modern world punishes this brain type always on culture. Constant communication, social expectations that reward availability, not depth. So you adapt. You force yourself into spaces that drain you. You smile through conversations that exhaust you. And slowly, something starts to feel wrong. Not loud wrong, quiet wrong. You start questioning yourself. Why can't I enjoy this like everyone else? Why do I need so much alone time? Why do people feel overwhelming? Psychology has an answer. It's not what you've been told. Your brain isn't under-socialized, it's overstimulated, and when an internally focused brain is pushed into constant external engagement, it reacts by shutting down. That shutdown can look like withdrawal, emotional numbness, sudden detachment, but underneath it, your brain is simply trying to survive. Here's something most people never hear. People with this rare brain type don't bond through frequency. They bond through intensity. You don't need to talk every day. You don't need constant updates. You need moments of real alignment. One conversation that goes deep, one shared silence that feels safe. One exchange where you don't have to perform, that's connection for you. And psychology backs this up. Studies show that internally oriented thinkers form fewer relationships but significantly deeper ones. They don't scatter their energy, they invest it, which explains why losing a connection hits you harder, why betrayal feels devastating, why superficial friendships never stick. Your brain doesn't do casual attachment, it does meaning. Now here's the twist most people don't expect. This brain type often gets mislabeled as lonely, but loneliness and aloneness are not the same. Loneliness is the absence of connection you want. Aloneness is the presence of space you need, and your nervous system knows the difference, even when you don't. That's why forcing yourself to be social doesn't cure the discomfort, it amplifies it, because the real need isn't people, it's alignment. And when you don't have that, your brain chooses solitude over self-betrayal. Here's the part that changes everything. Once you stop fighting this wiring, once you stop trying to be more social, something shifts. You become selective instead of withdrawn, intentional instead of isolated, peaceful instead of drained. Psychology calls this self-congruence, when your behavior finally matches your neurological design. And when that happens, your energy stabilizes, your clarity returns, your sense of self strengthens. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't understand you. You stop chasing connection that costs you your peace. You stop seeing solitude as a problem to fix, and instead, you use it as a tool. Because here's the final truth. This rare brain type is often found in thinkers, creators, analysts, philosophers, and visionaries. People who see patterns others miss. People who question what others accept. People who don't need noise to feel alive. You were never meant to blend into the crowd. You were meant to observe it, understand it, and choose when to step in. So if socializing drains you, if silence restores you, if depth matters more than numbers, psychology doesn't say something is wrong with you. It says your brain is different. And different doesn't mean broken. It means powerful when you finally stop fighting it.